Welcome everyone, Costin here with my review of Starcraft II Legacy of the Void. It is the end of an era, the end of the trilogy that is Starcraft II. Though there's a DLC, I guess you could call it, or mission packs with Nova planned to come out early next year, but this is the end of the main story of Starcraft and the Coprulu sector. Not just Starcraft II, but Starcraft I as well. The story that started there in Starcraft I is finally over, with the characters there, Kerrigan, Raynor, Mengsk, Artanis, Zeratul, and so on. And Legacy of the Void is a really good game. In fact, I'd argue it's the best strategy game that I have played on gameplay and presentation level, graphics, sound, cinematics, music, etc. Not so much on a story level, but I'll get into that later. But suffice to say, Legacy of the Void stands so much above other strategy games that are out there on the market in terms of production values, polish, bug fixing, balance, design. Pretty much every level in terms of gameplay just stands above. In terms of co-op and multiplayer, just to get those two out of the way, co-op is a disappointment as I see it. The idea with the different commanders, each of them having their own unique units or having limited unit types depending on who you play and having special abilities, that's great. That would work well in theory. The problem is the missions themselves leave a lot to be desired. You'd think that they'd be challenging or engaging or perhaps longer than they actually are, but no, they're quite fast and they're not really that challenging. You know, having finished the campaign and jumping into co-op, I was really disappointed by the difficulty. I've beaten missions on Brutal with a level 2 character, and if I got level 15, I'm pretty sure that at least with some commanders, not all of them, but some commanders like Swan or Kerrigan or Verzun, I could probably solo these missions. And that speaks volumes about the overall competency when it comes to co-op. It's disappointing. They're gonna add more commanders, but that won't change anything. You know, I understand that they need to make it, you know, for all kinds of players, but I beat the game on Brutal. I would have expected something like when you're playing on Brutal and you can get so many abilities. And the game tells you, oh, you need to be this level to be able to handle Brutal. That's the recommended level. You'd expect that would be the situation, considering how difficult the campaign is. That's really not the case at all. So big disappointment. In terms of multiplayer, some new units, some changes. They've made some very positive changes and they've switched things up quite a bit. I'd say the only worthwhile change, the only change really worth talking about is the fact that they more than doubled the initial worker count, which makes the initial game far more interesting and makes the action progress more rapidly. People can expand faster, can build units faster, can take up, and you're seeing a lot of strategies that you wouldn't see before happening right now. The problem, however, with that change is that it makes new players, like, you know, I can handle it relatively well, quote unquote, just a platinum player anyway, but I can handle it, but a lot of people who are new to it won't handle it very well, and they made Legacy of the Void standalone to attract new players. They tried and focused on getting new players into the game, and then they do something like this, and I just don't think, you know, I think there's gonna be a drawback because of this change, but overall, positive impressions about the multiplayer, though there's some balance tweaking that needs to happen here, Blizzard. There are certain combinations of units right now that are just very, very fucking powerful against certain races. Like, at this moment, whenever I meet a Zerg player in multiplayer as Terran, I am fairly certain I will win most matches just because of the way it's designed right now with Liberators. Yeah, the Liberators are very powerful. Against Protoss, that's not really the case because Protoss have that fucking that fucking mothership core which can turn things around, but against Zerg things are, let's just say, not so favorable. That's not to say I haven't lost matches against Zerg players, I certainly have, but most of them, recently, I've won. Anyway, that's just multiplayer. Good impression, good job there overall, though there's some balance changes that need to happen. Co-op disappointment. In terms of the campaign is really good on a gameplay level. There's a lot of variety in the missions, like Blizzard stated that every mission would be unique in its own way. Not quite true. There's quite a few samey missions, even though they all have their unique twist. But most of them, the vast majority of the campaign missions, are quite interesting. Not to say that there aren't missions that are terrible. There certainly are. And defense missions in particular are not that interesting. The way Blizzard handles it. But overall, good job there. And good job on Blizzard recognizing the fact that people who are playing on Brutal want to get into the action quickly, don't want to sit on their asses doing nothing for the early game. So you get thrown into the action very quickly, you have limited number of units to start with, and you're going to have to deal with a lot to shift from your way. So things are going to be very fast in most of the missions in the game. Very challenging as well, a lot of challenge. Just not necessarily the best way of challenging a player in certain cases, but overall a really good amount of challenge, variety, and solid design. In terms of the unit design and the ship, in Wings of Liberty we could spend credits on units to upgrade them, and then we had the Protoss and Zerg research. In Heart of the Swarm we could upgrade Kerrigan and pick between various options. This is similar to Heart of the Swarm, where you can pick between various options with your units. Between Ire, Nerazim, Purifier, and Tal'Darim. Not for all units, there's 3 variants for each type, like Melee Warrior, Ranged Warrior, Cloaked Warrior, Artillery, Capital Ships, and so on. 3 variants, and it's between one of those sub-factions of the Protoss race that I mentioned, Tal'Darim, Purifiers, Nerazim, and Ire. Right? Good job there, and I like the fact that you can choose whatever you want. Like in Wings of Liberty, it didn't work so well. The system didn't work so well because of the limited number of credits you could get, and the limited research, and the fact you can go back on a choice. You were stuck with what you picked. That meant you would gravitate towards certain units, and you wouldn't experiment. Like here, you can experiment, and that's great. Same with the ship. The ship is powered by Solarite. This is the resource in this game, and you use Solarite to power up ship systems. Thing is, you can always change what you're powering up. You can change what abilities you have, what passive bonuses you have, and that's great. Good job on Blizzard on that level. So overall, very positive impression for the campaign. There's some problems though. The achievement system. Now, there are some really good achievements which present a good deal of challenge, and I really like the missions in the game, like say Rakshir, where you can do all the achievements and bonus objectives in one go, but it's far more difficult than just doing the regular mission, and that's great. That's how the achievements should be, just presenting an extra layer of challenge on top of just the regular mission. In theory, that's how it should work. The problem is that there are certain achievements which require you to cheese the shit out of your unit composition. Like there's a mission which you can finish with just 1 Dark Templar in terms of getting the achievement there, and that's not a really good design if you're just using 1 unit or a very small number of those units, and you can ignore basically the entire fucking enemy force and do that. That's bad mission design right there, and bad achievement design for that particular mission. There's achievements like that, and then there's achievements that contradict each other. You might have an achievement on hard difficulty which says, don't use this ability that you have on your unit more than 15 times, or don't use it to kill more than 15 units. Then another achievement for normal or even casual difficulty, which is like use it to kill 60 units. So big contradiction. That's just an example. There's plenty of other examples, like with Sky Shield mission, for instance. The normal and hard achievements don't work with the casual achievement, so to speak, or an achievement that you can get on any difficulty, and that's just a shame as I see it. I would, personally, I would prefer if achievements could all be gained in a single go, but that's just not how the situation is. And that's terrible achievement design. Then, far bigger problem than that, the defense missions and 2 of the final missions, the epilogue missions of Into the Void. There's 3 missions in Into the Void. One of them is defense mission. There's 3 defense missions in total in the game, in the last two final missions. The problem here is that Blizzard's mentality for every defense mission and those two missions in Into the Void, which are more typical missions, is shove as many units as possible against the player. It's not really good design, is it? Granted, one of them is mildly entertaining, but it just gets annoying to fight so many fucking hordes of enemies. I get it, Blizzard, I get it. You want to challenge players, but this is maybe not the best way of challenging a player. If you're relying on just shoving as many hordes of troops against you as possible, that's not particularly interesting as I see it. It's far worse for the defense missions than any regular mission is, because in a defense mission you're just sitting on your ass in a base defending that base, and it just gets really fucking boring and tedious. Even in the final mission of the main campaign in Salvation, where you're having to defend free entrances and you have your allied bases and you're trying to keep the allied bases alive, even then it's not that interesting to deal with that. But overall, really good on a gameplay level, and I think it's the best strategy game I've ever played. And this speaks volumes about other strategy games, which are just so fucking bland. I played Grey Goo and Active Aggression, and the games had terrible campaigns, bland campaigns with terrible design. Blizzard put a lot of effort here and a lot of care into making the missions here, and it shows. It's really fun to play this. Far more so than Wings of Liberty or Heart of Swarm ever were. So good job on that. You know, you'd think the final game in a trilogy would be the best one, and in this case it actually is, unlike so many other games that I could list here. Anyway, in terms of presentation, graphics, yeah, it's nothing spectacular compared to so many other games that are out there on the market. The engine's age is showing, certainly. They did improve it a bit, I think, or the performance has increased as far as I'm concerned. Maybe that's just my perspective, just how I view it. Might be wrong, objectively wrong, but you know, I think that they improved the graphics a bit. And overall, I'm really impressed with how the game looks and how it sounds. The cinematic design, like Blizzard has one of the best cinematics department in the entire fucking industry, and it shows. So, those cinematics, superb job on Blizzard's part. Superb job with the sound design, the music design, and the voice acting.
For our warrior hearts are bound by honor, traditions. Battle is waged in the name of the many. The brave, whose generation after generation choose the mantle of Dark Templar.
So if I were to judge it purely on the gameplay and presentation level, I'd argue that Legacy of the Void is the best strategy game I've played by a country mile. The problem is that we don't just have gameplay and presentation, we also have the story. And with the story, like with every single Blizzard game ever since vanilla World of Warcraft, it sucks. Like, ever since Burning Crusade has come out, the story of Blizzard games has gone down the fucking drain. And Burning Crusade had a huge number of issues as well. Space Goats, anyone? Yeah, the Draenei, Space Goats. Well done, Blizzard. So many issues with Blizzard storytelling and so many issues in Legacy of the Void. I won't analyze the entire story because I would be putting more effort than the actual fucking writers of this game put into making the story. But I just want to call in something major here. Remember how in Heart of Swarm and Wings of Liberty, how Kerrigan was made out to be this essential character to stopping Amon, how without her we'd all lose and the entire universe would be consumed by Amon. Guess what? You defeat Amon mostly without her help. She shows up in 2 missions in the main campaign, and she's not essential in any way, even in those missions. She's not essential to stopping Amon. You stop Amon with the Protoss, and with some help of the Dominion, who gives you the Keystone. But overall, you're mostly on your fucking own, and you defeat Amon. You take Amon head on, and you defeat him on your fucking own. So exactly what relevance did Kerrigan have in the entire storyline? Kerrigan does play a major role in killing Amon once you've defeated him, But in terms of stopping him, in terms of destroying his armies, in terms of preventing his plans of destroying the universe, you do that. Without her help, without her being an essential character. So, way to go, Blizzard writers, Metzen and the others, in terms of making everything that we did in Heart of the Swarm and Wings of Liberty completely and utterly fucking pointless. In point of fact, I'd argue that everything we did in those games, or those expansions, was fucking harmful to the overall effort of defeating Amon. Why? Because in Wings of Liberty, we were killing a bunch of Tal'Darim to get artifact pieces. We killed a bunch of Dominion troops. We weakened the Dominion in Wings of Liberty. Half the fucking Dominion fleet was wasted desergifying Kerrigan. And what that had to do in the large scheme of things, no one knows. What did desergifying Kerrigan accomplish in the large scheme of things? Oh, nothing. Fuck all. Why was that important? Why did that matter? No explanation ever provided in any of the games. Don't tell me about some book or anything like that. Every single book that Blizzard has ever written for any of their games is terrible. I've read quite a few of them. So yeah, that's harmful. In Heart of the Swarm, we killed Mengs, severely weakened the Dominion, destroyed its main military force. So, well, brilliant job, right? On Blizzard's part in terms of everything that we did having any real relevancy in terms of stopping Amon. It fucking didn't. In fact, if we hadn't freed Kerrigan, would that have changed anything? Probably not, in all seriousness. Probably fucking not. Right? Then there's... Oh man, my brain hurts just thinking about this stuff. Oh, Blizzard. How much shit do you throw at the players? How much crap in terms of the storytelling. Oh boy. Then there's Blizzard killing Zeratul in the second fucking mission of the game. Legit. Impactful death, absolutely, but the catch there is that you're playing Artanis throughout the entire fucking game, which is a considerably less interesting character. And before anyone says otherwise, he was considerably less interesting than Artanis ever was, even in Brood War. Artanis was just a duck in Brood War. That's how he was viewed, that's how he walked. Zeratul was the prime character after Tassadar died, that is. Right? So it's like, oh, we play Artanis, okay. And then there's Vorazun. They killed Zeratul. This is the thing that pisses me off. It's like they killed Zeratul to make room for another Dark Templar character. For that gender diversity. Yeah, fuck you, Blizzard. For killing off one of the best characters you ever made. It's like, yeah, let's kill off some of the best characters or completely ruin them. Also known as Arcturus Mechs, which they ruined in Starcraft II. But hey, good job, Blizzard. One thing I gotta point out here, if the Keystone was so important, right, to Amon, if it's such a useful tool, then why did Narud, who was working for Amon, why did Narud have Raynor retrieve the artifact pieces from the Tal'Darim? Which at the time, which this game makes a point to, and Heart of the Swarm also did, that they were Amon's fucking servants. Can I ask about that? Oh yeah, because Blizzard doesn't care. Because Blizzard retcons things whenever they fucking feel like it. Remember that brood mother that Kerrigan created and put on that Protoss ship that was heading towards Shakuras? Yeah, neither does Blizzard. Oh man, I guess that's their excuse for having Zerg in the next game. Yeah, good job, Blizzard. Hey, what about Tosh or Ariel or anything like that? Nope, doesn't matter. Nothing we did mattered in Heart of the Storm or Wings of Liberty. It was harmful, it was stupid, and this game is the worst out of all of them in terms of the stupidity. We're playing Artanis throughout the entire game, and he loses his entire military in a day. And then he proceeds to kill a large portion of his own military to free them. Okay. How is Artanis not considered an utter imbecile by everyone around him? Well, the only character who's willing to call out Artanis for being a bloody imbecile, and pretty much everyone else, and call out the idiocy in the whole fucking plot, is Alarak. A bit of self-awareness. Good job, Blizzard. If only the rest if only every other character was as self-aware as Alarak was, perhaps we'd have a far better story. Because he mocks the characters, his wit is awesome, and he's really the best character in this entire fucking series by far. Like, Alarak is by far away the best character Blizzard has made in StarCraft in a long fucking time. Would have been far more interesting to have Zeratul and Alarak, but hey, that's just my take on it. If there's one good thing in this story, it's Alarak. That's it, and he's good just because he's mocking everything else. So take that however you will. Every other character from Rohana to Clone Phoenix to the Face Myth to Artanis to Vorazun is dry, boring, forgettable. None of them is a remarkable character. And there's just so much idiocy with every single one of them. It's like, oh, I'm a clone of Phoenix. Great. Blizzard. Costin signing out.